Australia has been humiliated by India with a 295-run loss in the first test, leaving just one thing for Pat Cummins' men to do: panic. It's a huge loss, Crash, at the start of such a crucial 5-test series.
And Tony, it wasn't just the loss, it was the manner of the loss.
Yeah.
I have never heard a quieter Australian team on stump mic. And I think the absence of David Warner, that was telling there, you know, the man who gets them up. But it was just, Australia used to have an aura. It's extraordinary to think young Jaswal, age 22, first tour of Australia, would have the gumption to say to Mitchell Starc, "You're bowling too slowly," and he wasn't even provoked. And then when he was asked at the press conference, "Why did you say that?" he said, "Because I thought he was bowling slowly." Like, extraordinary. And Nitish Reddy, the young all-rounder, came down and started whacking Australia everywhere, and there was no response.
Why?
So I just think we've got this placid... Since Sandpaper Gate, the team has lost their aura a bit. And it's one thing being sort of the ugly Australian thing, but body language is so important to any sporting team. Rob, you know that. Well, the body language was as timid as any team I've ever seen from Australia. I just couldn't believe it. It's quite staggering, really.
Do they designate somebody to do that, be the person, the energy lifter?
Well, when Dave was there, he sort of took it upon himself to, like you said, get the whole team up. And, you know, if David was quiet, it was often, you know, a tap on the shoulder, come on, you need to be a bit more vocal, get the team up. So whether that was his role or something that he placed upon himself, he thought it was his duty to bring that energy into the field. And, you know, you saw that with his fielding. But that stump mic, it was very, very quiet.
And it makes you think, and you made this point, it's true, that players consumed by form slumps suddenly go very quiet. And I think that's a factor too. Like, with so many batsmen out of form, blokes are sitting there thinking, geez, I hope I go okay.
But you did mention that they went into this test match with a lot of question marks over the form of a number of players, and that played out again.
But I've got to say, Rob, I got it wrong. I thought this Indian team, which had 3 new members in it, was so vulnerable and gettable. And yet you look back, India have won 5 of their last 9 tests in Australia and lost only 2. They are dominating Australia in Australia, which was unthinkable decades ago, Lawrence.
In the run-up to the first test, everyone was like, Virat Kohli, there's a shadow over him. He has had poor form, but there was, you know, he's having secret scans. Everyone had their fingers crossed that he wasn't going to play, and he just stepped up like the champion that he is. And
Rohit Sharma's still yet to come back.
Hey, that's part B to the story. They have got 5 outstanding cricketers ready to go. 2 spinners, Jadeja, Ashwin, Sharma, and ready to go. We haven't got anyone not one player on the outside of the test team that deserves to be in it.
Crash, sorry, Tony, when you analyse the test match, though, it started very well.
Yeah,
I mean, you said last week on this show that, you know, if they get a good start, if you get Kohli out, they did. So everything was there. So then it crashed.
They potentially absorb pressure better than the Australians.
They have no fear of Australia. And back in the 1980s, I used to see Mohammad Azharuddin come over here, the captain, and he'd look at his shoes when he's giving a press conference. There was no confidence. Now they absolutely radiated. It's incredible. India have taken over the world. Now, Tony, the question is now, what is going to happen to Marnus Labuschagne? I feel that he will play in Adelaide, that he will be in the team. I don't think there's much doubt about that at all, but that's his last chance for the time being. If he fails, if there's a repetition of that in Adelaide, I don't reckon he will be playing in front of his home crowd in Brisbane. He doesn't need much, 30 or 40, but Adelaide he averages 70 and he scored 3 centuries there. He loves the ground. It is the right decision to play him. But
you forget he's an all-rounder. I don't know, he was the enforcer. He was unleashed on unions and bowled this. I mean, really, this was a bit of nonsense, wasn't it?
Well, Kerry O'Keefe's got a theory that stop him bowling because he's got so much going on inside his head that you've just got to stop the noise.
Is he trying to be Neil Wagner? Is that what's going on there?
Well, it was interesting that they were using, they threw the ball to him to rough up the Indians. Like, that's just crazy.
It is. It's an ugly look, and I don't think it helps him because he's got enough to worry about. Like, just let him sit in the field there. But it's... well,
the thing is, he's been hammered on his batting and he's been hammered on his spell in bowling.
Yeah. So he's...
In fact, there was a headline in one of the papers where it said, you know you're in trouble when Manus is bowling.
Yeah.
So his first 30 Test matches, he got 10 centuries. In his last 22 Test matches, there's been 1.
It was funny because we all wrote the story. He was the world's luckiest cricketer. I think over his first 41 chances that he gave in Tests, 16 were dropped. And he profited, and he got his average up here. But then Mother Cricket, as she often does, just said, actually, Manus, I've got a little bit of news for you, old champ. I'm just going to tilt it back this way. And it's happened too, Laurie.
A lot's been said about his bowling and his batting, but nothing about his fringe. Because it's no good.
Good stat, this, because he's not alone. He's not alone. Steve Smith played 192 Test innings without a golden duck. He's had 2 in his last 5 digs. Now, look, he looked better in the second innings as well, but 17, but that's certainly not enough. He's got some issues. And in fact, that entire batting lineup has issues.
Yeah, I think, that, yeah, again, like that first innings, they were looking to survive rather than to score runs. And then I think in that second innings, we saw Travis Head, you know, he put on a very decent score. And so that was promising. But we will see, I think, a more attacking team going into Adelaide.
They will tell Labuschagne to play with more intent, to get out there like this. But I have to say this, Jasprit Bumrah is on course to be arguably the greatest fast bowler of all time. Statistically, he's there. He doesn't have to improve. If he maintains his current stats, he stands shoulder to shoulder with the great Malcolm Marshall, who I think most people think is the best. So, and he comes from India, the country that used to have no fast bowlers. Extraordinary.
So we talk about Australia and what they have to do, and there's a lot of things they've got to do. What does that do for India?
Oh, well, they've got reserves up their sleeves, but because he bowls off such a short run, you can't tire him out, Bumrah. He's incredible. And just to clarify, Tony...
Look at that.
Every time you put that up, people said, see, he throws it. No, he doesn't, because his arm is going back. If he bent it forward and do it from there, that's a throw. Yeah. You are allowed... If you hyperextend, you get the benefit of that.
Yeah,
so,
the Fox Halo showed that perfectly. It is just genetic gift. I have that. I'm double jointed. See, I can do that.
That's amazing.
Isn't that amazing? It hasn't helped me in cricket at all, but still.
But you mentioned his smile and that, and he reminds me a little bit of Glenn McGrath in that his nose is so good, he's just going to take wickets, so there's no point in being nervous because I'm just going to get you today, Rob.
Yep.
Wonderful performances all over the shop for India. Another one at the top of the pile, though. Confirmation that Yashasvi Jaiswal is such a special talent. Look at that.
To live that sort of life and come through it, you can't scare him. And that's why he can say to Stark, gee, you're a bit slow today, because you can't bruise a kid like that because he's seen it. At age 22, he's like a 40-year-old.
Yeah. It is, you can see the passing of the baton really with Virat Kohli, who luckily was out of form and only managed 100. Honestly, the game was over before Travis Head got out, but that didn't stop Bumrah and Virat Kohli getting a little bit overexcited. Have a listen.
That shows you they are up
shows you
for it.
how much this means to them, and I think that's what the Australians were missing.
Yep. That passion. And you know what I loved about Kohli's century? He sat for one day with his pads on waiting to bat. Out of form, he was twitching, and I thought, you can't score runs here. A few mates of mine, Journo, saw him at a coffee shop this morning, and he brought his family in. And they chatted to him and they said, geez, you know what, for all this talk about him being a superstar, just a down-to-earth, he's matured. Yep. When he came to Australia, he was a young hothead early on, but he's matured. He's quite the man now. Australia's
best player in the Test is probably Josh Hazlewood. He faced the media at the end of day 3, but for some, one of his answers raised more questions. Have a listen.
What do you do tomorrow to try and turn it around?
Well, he'd probably have to ask one of the batters that question, probably. I'm sort of relaxing and trying to get a bit of physio and a bit of treatment, and I'm probably looking mostly towards next test and what plans we can do against these batters.
That to me tells me that there's potentially a divided change room.
Publicly, I've never heard an Australian come out and kind of divide the camp into batters and bowlers. There's 11 batters.
And what the Indian dressing room will be thinking when they hear something like that? So we know there are cracks on the pitch, but I feel there are some mental cracks as well.
Is there a big leap from what poor Josh Hazlewood was saying to
Probably a little bit of a Freudian slip, but I mean, it's also very true. We need more runs, and that's that.
But he stated the fact that, they've bowled and now it's up to the batters. I didn't see too much in that. It'd be like a defender saying, we've done our job, no goals.
I
now
think it was the fact that the
strikers to
game was
score.
still going
The way
and he
it
was
going.
looking into. But you know, Josh Hazlewood, he's laid back. He's a country boy, and he wouldn't have meant it the way people have taken it. I'm pretty sure.
I guess it was the circumstances. You're right.
Yeah. Although I must admit, I agree. I think he is that, you know, matter-of-fact sort of guy with a little bit of a humorous bent to him. But I often felt that, you know, over the last few years, the batsmen and the bowlers are, you know, some of them are in a different sort of world to each other. That these are close and these are close.
And the dynamic may change when suddenly the captaincy goes to the bowling group, as it has with Pat Cummins as well.
Absolutely.